Namaskar. So this time around, the government says you spend money, you have to pay taxes to the government. So not only that you have to pay taxes when you earn money, you have to also pay taxes when you spend money. So you go abroad, there is something called as TCS, tax collected at source. Let us understand what this tax collected at source is. And for that, I have Akhilesh Bhargav with me. And Akhilesh, long time, after a long time, we are having this. Great to have you back.
Yes.
And Akhilesh, tell me, what is this tax collected at source?
So, Sujit, before we go to the present controversy, we need to understand the very concept of TCS and the LRS, which is where the entire application is. LRS is something called Liberalized Remittance Scheme of the Reserve Bank of India, and it is meant only for resident individuals. I will make it easier for the viewers. Till 2004, there were a lot of regulations in FEMA for remittances to be made by individuals. If you wanted to remit for medical treatment, there was a different regulation. If you wanted to travel abroad, was different. Business travel was different. Giving a gift or a donation was different. So for resident individuals, not only were the regulations too many, and for everything you had to be within a limit or go and seek an approval. In 2004, the government came up with what was called LRS, which is a liberalized remittance scheme, in which they said, for resident individuals up to $25,000 a financial year, you can make your remittance, and that is the upper ceiling. You don't need to go to the Reserve Bank of India for approval. Over the years, as Reserve Banks, as the government of India's foreign exchange reserve became bigger and bigger, this limit also went up, and today the limit is $2.5 lakh per financial year per resident individual. Now, that was the remittance scheme of the government. And wherever there is an expenditure or an income, the government is always looking to collect taxes. So in 2020, the government came up with this announcement that a lot of money is going abroad and we don't know whether tax is being evaded, and we need to keep a control on that. So we are going to levy TCS, which is tax to be collected at source, on any remittances that a resident individual makes in the LRS scheme, which is a liberalized remittance scheme. They came up with a rate of 5%. They said that up to 7 lakhs of spending, we will not deduct tax at source. We will not collect tax at source, I'm sorry. And beyond that, it's going to be 5%. And they also said that if remittances are for education and for medical treatment abroad, there was a concessional regime in it. It started from October 2020 and it continued till this budget, when the finance minister announced that we are now going to increase this TCS, tax collected at source, from 5% to 20%, and that there is not going to be any threshold of 7 lakh rupees as it was there earlier. The fact of the matter is that the controversy which has arisen now, Sujit, should have arisen then itself when the budget was under discussion, because there is certainly no logic in saying that now the tax rate should go up from 5% to 20%, because originally the government had come up with this measure only to identify these transactions and ensure that there is no tax evasion taking place. If that was the thing, then where is the justification for increasing the rate from 5% to 20%? The other issue that the government came up now was, it said that so far expenditure under a credit card is not covered in the LRS. And now we are also going to restrict it for those expenses which are being incurred under a credit card. That's the change that has taken place now. At an operating level, Sujit, what happens is, if you are making a remittance of 5 lakh rupees abroad now for the purpose of an overseas tour package, the bank is going to be collecting 20% on your remittances from your bank account and depositing it with the government. That's how the scheme operates. So whatever payments overseas you're going to make under the LRS scheme, depending on what is the applicable rate, you're going to be having tax being collected by the bank from your bank account and remitting it to the government. That's the operation of the scheme, Sujit.
So, Akhilesh, then in that case, let me understand. A rich person may have account all over the world, may have money all over the world. It is finally a middle class and a poor, तो ठीक है मैं नहीं बोलूंगा, but it is the middle class that is going to suffer, because they may not have
Yeah.
accounts anywhere else. They have to spend in their car.
Yes. So when the government is trying to justify this particular increase that took place and they covered the credit cards also, they came up with a few justifications. Those justifications said, hang on, TCS is not a final tax you're paying. So if you don't have a tax liability, it will be refunded to you. Now, if you look at this very justification from the angle of a middle class salaried earner, in his case, tax is being collected at source on almost all his income. And in his case, this TCS which is being collected is going to be ultimately refunded to him. But it means that you are going to be giving money to the government only to be refunded back to you after you file your return. As far as a high net worth individual is concerned, it doesn't impact him at all. He earns tons of income. His tax rate is 30% plus bracket. So TCS at 20% doesn't really hurt him. So primarily, by getting into the TCS situation, your cash flow is going to be blocked. And when we talk of cash flows, the most impacted always will be the middle class, not the HNIs.
So Akhilesh, see, normally if one understands that taxes are paid for income, correct? When I get something, I pay taxes. This is a layman's understanding. Isn't this the first time when I'm paying taxes to spend money for which I've already paid taxes?
Oh, yes. So the thought process behind this was that in certain transactions, you are not able to deduct tax at source. So you must collect tax at source. Now, TCS has come with this thought process that the banks must collect tax at source before or at the time when they are making remittances overseas on your behalf for LRS. And the rate is as high as 10 or 20%. The government likes to say that, listen, 20% is not a very steep rate because if you're earning income over 12 lakh rupees an annum, you are anyway kicked into the 20% tax bracket. And it's not the final tax. You can adjust it against your tax liability. But like I said, in the case of an ordinary middle class person whose tax is being anyway deducted at source, and now he, saves money and he goes on a tour abroad, or he saves money and he now wants to visit his children abroad, you're going to be spending 20% more, waiting for the next year to file your IT return and then claim a refund.
So, Akhilesh, tell me, I still don't understand the fact, and I still can't fathom the fact that I have paid taxes once, haven't I? For the money I'm going abroad, that is tax paid money. How can I be taxed double?
So, a lot of times even TDS becomes an extra tax collector because you may not have taxable income, but still it got deducted. And TCS for sure also comes in that same bracket, Sujit, that you may not have taxable income, but yet because you incurred an expenditure, you may have a close relative abroad. Let's say in New York, you have a close relative and you need to remit money from here for his maintenance and upkeep. Even that gets into a 20% TCS. So you may send, let's say 5 lakh rupees or 1 lakh rupees to that relative abroad. You're going to spend not just 5 lakhs, you're going to end up giving 1 lakh. 1 lakh, if I take that as an example, you will end up paying 20% more, which is 1,20,000. So you're blocking your money. In other words, the government is taking an unsecured loan from you. They'll refund it next year if you don't have a tax liability.
So the refund is a different issue. Spending is the most difficult part of it. So Akhilesh, which means a couple of things. Middle class sending their ward for education abroad is now 20% more expensive.
No, there is an exemption for education. In the case of education, they are saying that if your ward is going abroad and you have borrowed money from approved financial sources, in that case, we will take TCS only at 0.5%. But if you're not borrowing and sending, then the TCS will be 5%. That's for education. And for medical, the rate is 5%. So these are the only two where there is a bit of a consideration. For any other payment you make abroad, which includes traveling abroad because you have worked hard in life and now you want to take a holiday abroad, you'll end up paying 20%.
So Akhilesh, if I were to borrow money, what is the kind of interest that I get when I borrow money for education abroad?
The education loans could be anything between 7 to 10%, if I'm right. I haven't taken an education loan, so I wouldn't be aware, but I think that's the rate going on, Sujit.
So 7 to 10% if I take loan, and if I show that as loan, then I have to pay only 0.5%, which means I save 20%.
Yes. But in case you have your own money and you are willing to spend it and not borrow, then the government says, great, you got your own money, so you now are going to be charged a TCS of 5%.
So pay us 20%. So even if I have money, what stops me from borrowing from the bank and paying for my ward's education and paying less on interest?
You would prefer to do that. But the real purpose of all this that is going on, Sujit, I think is different. Of course, the middle class gets impacted very badly, according to me, on their payments, because the HNIs, it doesn't matter to them. The liberalized remittance scheme, remittances have been going up year after year. They've gone up from $12.61 billion about 3 years ago to $24 billion last year. That's the kind of jump that is taking place in the LRS. And incidentally, a lot of it has to do, about 50% of these LRS remittances are going for the purpose of travel. I think the government is trying to discourage the usage of foreign exchange for the LRS remittances. And that's why you have such a draconian levy of 20%, because in case they just wanted to identify who are the people who are remitting under LRS, they could have come up with a token figure of just 0.5%, like in the case of education loans and remittances abroad, or it could have been 1% or 2%. Why 20%? So it's basically to discourage these kind of remittances by, especially as I said, the middle class, because the HNI doesn't care.
So my last question, Akhilesh, then is till up to 7 lakhs, do I understand I don't have to pay per annum? Only if I spend more than 7 lakhs is when I have to pay?
No. The 7 lakh threshold is only for the purpose of education and medical. Any other remittance has no threshold, and the TCS is 20%. So if you have managed to earn some money, save some money, and let's say go to Sri Lanka on a tour package, and the tour package may be just ₹1 lakh, your tour arranger is still going to collect 20% of ₹1 lakh from you. So there is no threshold whatsoever. The only threshold is for education and medical. No other remittance under LRS has got a threshold.
So the government technically is telling me, do not go abroad. There is no question of us visiting outside of our borders. But if you visit outside of our borders, we are going to charge you 20%. Is that what the story is, Akhilesh?
Oh yes, put money on the table and go. And next year, take a refund if you are eligible for it, which in the case of most middle class whose income is taxed at source, they might be going for the TCS.
Akhilesh, last question. In fact, I told you the last question, but one more question. I've got 2 more minutes with me. I would use that. My last question is, in these laws, these taxes, isn't this for the middle class primarily? Because the lower, the poor class will not be affected. They will not react to it. So the vote bank is safe. But the middle class, on the other hand, and like you rightly said, the upper class won't react. But the middle class, it's they who get hit. Like most of the policies, most of these government policies. So isn't that the way it is right now, actually?
So to make it easier for the middle class, what the government has done is, when they came up with the FAQs after this announcement was made on 16th of May, is they said for credit card spends up to 7 lakh rupees, which are, if you want to make some payments for some subscriptions, etc., they said up to that, we will give you a threshold deduction. Sujit, frankly, the way all these FAQs and clarification have been drafted, there's going to be a lot of confusion. Believe me, when you go to a banker and you may be saying, hang on, the government said that if I'm using a credit card for making subscription payments, etc., and there's a threshold of 7 lakhs, the ignorant banker may not even know, and he'll say, I'm going to collect the tax at source. You see what kind of a refund you want. And this kind of a confusion is coming further when the government says that, TCS is going to be applied only for personal payments and not for business-related payments. In the sense, if you're traveling abroad and you're spending for business-related payments, then your credit card payments for business purposes are not going to have TCS. Now, I'm traveling abroad. How do you differentiate whether it was personal or business? So the banker who's supposed to collect the taxes source is also always going to err on the side of the revenue and say, I'm going to collect it. I'm not convinced that this was, for business and not personal. So there is going to be a lot of confusion in the application. Believe me, they will always err on the side of the government, and it is, the middle class who's going to be the sufferer.
Akhilesh, as always, what a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for talking to us on this subject.
Thanks, Sujit.